Alice, a 15-year-old teenager, woke up to the familiar sound of the alarm clock at 6 a.m. She stretched out in her narrow bed, her eyes wandering around the small room she occupied in the cramped apartment in the suburbs of Paris. The walls, decorated with posters of bands and famous actors, contrasted with the simplicity of the furniture. Getting up, Alice walked to the window and opened the curtains, revealing the modest view of the neighborhood in which she lived. Old buildings clustered together, forming a maze of narrow streets. In the distance, the Eiffel Tower rose, a constant reminder of the glamorous city that existed beyond her world. Alice. Breakfast is ready. Her mother's voice, Marie, echoed through the apartment. Alice sighed, grabbed her neatly pressed school uniform, and dressed quickly. Entering the small kitchen, she found her mother, Marie, already dressed for work, her cleaner's uniform contrasting sharply with her daughter's smart uniform. "Good morning, dear," Marie smiled, placing a plate of croissants on the table. "Did you sleep well?" Alice nodded, sitting down to eat. "Yes, Mom." "And you? What time did you get in last night?" Marie sighed, sitting down with a cup of coffee. "Late. The office downtown needed extra cleaning. But don't worry, I have enough energy for today." Alice watched her mother, noticing the dark circles under her tired eyes. Marie worked as a cleaner in several jobs, often working overtime to make sure they could pay the bills and, most importantly, Alice's tuition at the private school. "Mom, you don't have to work so hard," Alice murmured, feeling a pang of guilt. "I could try to get a scholarship at a public school." Marie interrupted her daughter with a firm gesture. "Don't even think about it, Alice. Your education is the most important thing. You deserve the best opportunities, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure of it." Silence hung between them for a moment, full of unspoken emotions. Alice knew her mother sacrificed a lot for her but also felt the weight of the expectations that came with those sacrifices. "Come on, finish your coffee," Marie said, getting up to do the dishes. "We don't want you to be late." Alice finished her breakfast and went to brush her teeth. As she looked in the mirror in the small bathroom, adjusting her tie, she couldn't help but think about the difference between her life at home and at school. In the prestigious private school she attended, Alice was surrounded by classmates from wealthy and influential families. The children of politicians, entrepreneurs, and celebrities filled the halls, flaunting the latest fashion trends and discussing their exotic vacations. Alice grabbed her backpack and returned to the kitchen. Marie was already at the door, keys in hand. "Ready?" Marie asked, smiling. Alice nodded, and together they went downstairs. On the street, Marie kissed her daughter on the cheek. "Have a great day, dear. I'll be home late today, but I'll leave dinner ready for you." "Thanks, Mom," Alice replied, watching Marie walk away toward the subway. As she walked to the bus stop, Alice couldn't help but feel a mix of love and frustration. She loved her mother deeply and admired her strength and dedication. But she also longed for the life she saw her classmates lead: trips, branded clothes, and chauffeur-driven cars. On the bus, Alice opened her notebook, reviewing her notes for an important test. She knew that her academic performance was crucial, not only for her future but also as a way to justify her mother's sacrifices. Arriving at school, Alice took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and entered the imposing gates. For a few hours, she could pretend she belonged entirely to this privileged world, leaving behind the reality of her small apartment in the suburbs. But as she walked through the luxurious corridors, greeting classmates and teachers, Alice carried the weight of two worlds with her, that of the privileged teenager attending one of Paris's best schools and the daughter of a cleaner who struggled to provide her with this opportunity. The day of the school's career fair dawned sunny, but for Alice, a cloud of anxiety hung over her head. She knew this was an important event, where the students' parents came to share their professional experiences, inspiring the young people in their future career choices. As she got ready for school, Alice tried to ignore the growing feeling of discomfort in her stomach. Upon arriving at school, the courtyard was transformed. Colorful tents housed booths of various professions, from doctors and lawyers to artists and entrepreneurs. The students circulated excitedly, some accompanied by parents elegantly dressed in expensive suits and designer dresses. Alice wandered among the booths, pretending to be interested, but her mind was elsewhere. She knew her mother, Marie, had taken time off from one of her jobs to attend the event. The idea of her mother, dressed in simple clothes and talking about her work as a cleaner, made Alice feel a mix of shame and guilt. "Alice. Come see, my dad will talk about being a heart surgeon," called Chloe, one of the school's most popular classmates. Alice forced a smile and followed her friend, trying to distract herself. As she listened to Chloe's father talk about saving lives and medical advances, her eyes kept checking the entrance to the courtyard, fearing and at the same time hoping for her mother's arrival. Then she saw her. Marie entered the courtyard, wearing her best blouse and pants, but still visibly simpler than the other parents. In her hands, she carried a bag with some of her cleaning supplies. Alice's heart raced, and she felt the blood drain from her face. Without thinking twice, Alice ran towards her mother, intercepting her before anyone could notice her arrival. "Mom!" Alice whispered, pulling Marie into a more secluded corner. "What are you doing here dressed like that? And why did you bring that?" She pointed to the bag with cleaning supplies. Marie, surprised by her daughter's reaction, answered, confused, "But darling, you knew I was coming. I thought I'd show a little of my work, maybe inspire some young people about the importance of every profession." At that moment, Chloe and a group of friends approached, curious about the interaction. "Alice, who is this?" asked Chloe, her eyes appraising Marie from head to toe. Panic overtook Alice. In a split second, she made a decision that would change everything. "Oh, this is Marie. She's our housekeeper," Alice said, the words coming out of her mouth before she could think of the consequences. The ensuing silence was deafening. Alice could feel her mother's gaze on her, a mix of shock and pain that made her heart ache. "Oh, I see," said Chloe, her tone condescending. "Well, it's interesting that your housekeeper comes to the career fair. Alice, let's go, my dad will start his presentation soon." Alice cast a pleading look at her mother, silently begging her to understand, to go along with the lie. Marie, still stunned, just nodded slightly. "Go ahead, Miss Alice," Marie spoke, her voice trembling. I'll find a place to talk about cleaning." As she was dragged away by Chloe and the others, Alice looked back. She saw her mother standing alone, her expression a mix of hurt and resignation that would be etched in Alice's memory forever. The rest of the fair passed in a blur for Alice. She wandered among the presentations, unable to focus, her stomach turning with guilt and shame for what she had done. From time to time, she saw her mother from afar, timidly talking to some students about cleaning techniques, keeping up the charade that Alice had created. As the day wore on, Alice felt the weight of her lie grow. She had betrayed the person who loved her most in the world, all for fear of the judgment of people she barely knew. The realization of what she had done began to weigh on her, but it was too late to turn back. Marie felt like she'd been punched in the stomach when she heard Alice's words. "Our housekeeper." The phrase echoed in her mind as she watched her daughter walk away with the group of stylish teenagers. For a moment, she was paralyzed, unable to process what had just happened. Taking a deep breath, Marie forced herself to regain her composure. She looked at the bag in her hands, full of cleaning supplies that she had brought with such pride to show off her craft. Now, those same items felt like a ton. "Well, if I'm going to be the housekeeper, then I'll be the best housekeeper this school has ever seen," she muttered to herself, swallowing the lump in her throat. Marie walked over to an empty space between the booths and began arranging her products. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged the bottles and cloths, but she forced herself to keep a smile on her face. It didn't take long for some curious students to approach. Marie took a deep breath and began to speak. "Hello, young people. My name is Marie, and I'm here to talk about the importance of cleanliness and organization in any work environment." As she spoke, Marie watched Alice discreetly from a distance. Her daughter seemed tense, laughing nervously at her classmates' jokes and casting furtive glances in her direction. A young man raised his hand. "Excuse me, but why is a housekeeper at the career fair?" Marie felt the blow but kept smiling. "Good question. Because every profession, no matter how simple it may seem, has its value and dignity. Without people like me, how would you keep your offices, hospitals, and schools running properly?" As Marie spoke, she noticed that some students really began to pay attention. She shared cleaning tips, talked about the satisfaction of seeing a job well done, and even mentioned how organizational skills and attention to detail are valued in many careers. "You know, many executives started their careers in simpler jobs," she said. "These experiences teach discipline, work ethic, and humility, essential qualities for any leader." While talking, Marie couldn't help but think of all the sacrifices she had made for Alice. The sleepless nights, the extra jobs, all to give her daughter the opportunity to study at this prestigious school. And now, here she was, pretending to be someone she wasn't, all because her own daughter was ashamed of her true identity. In a moment, her eyes met Alice's across the courtyard. For an instant, Marie saw a flicker of regret in her daughter's gaze, but Alice quickly looked away, returning her attention to her wealthy classmates. Marie continued her presentation, answering questions and even demonstrating some cleaning techniques. Surprisingly, some students seemed genuinely interested, asking insightful questions about time management and organization. "You know," Marie said, feeling a sudden wave of emotion, "sometimes people judge a profession without really understanding what it involves. But every job, every person, has a story and a value. Never forget that." At the end of her presentation, Marie even received some polite applause. As she packed up her belongings, she noticed Alice hesitantly approaching. "Ma." "Marie," Alice stammered, almost letting slip the word "Mom. Thank you for your presentation. It was very informative." Marie looked at her daughter, seeing the conflict in her eyes. For a moment, she considered confronting her right there, exposing the lie, and reclaiming her place as a proud mother. But seeing the fear on Alice's face, she decided to keep up the charade. "You're welcome, Miss Alice," Marie replied, her voice calm but laden with a sadness that made Alice shiver. "I hope it was helpful for you and your classmates." As Alice quickly walked away, clearly relieved to have kept up appearances, Marie felt a mix of pain and determination. This situation had revealed much about her relationship with her daughter, and she knew a serious conversation would be necessary soon. For now, Marie finished packing up her things, ready to leave the school with her head held high. She had fulfilled her role, both the real one and the forged one, with dignity. Now, it remained to be seen how this experience would affect her relationship with Alice going forward. The sun began to set as the career fair ended. Alice, emotionally exhausted, watched the last parents and students leave the schoolyard. Her gaze instinctively wandered to the spot where her mother had given her presentation, but Marie was already gone, leaving only a void that seemed to echo the emptiness in her own chest. As she walked home, Alice felt the weight of her actions piling up on her shoulders. The initial euphoria of having saved her social reputation had dissipated, leaving an uncomfortable feeling of guilt and shame in its place. Arriving home, Alice found Marie in the small kitchen, quietly preparing dinner. The air was heavy with unspoken words. "Hi, Mom," Alice said hesitantly, her voice almost a whisper. Marie turned briefly, nodding in acknowledgement before turning her attention back to the stove. "Dinner will be ready soon," she replied, her voice devoid of its usual warmth. Alice sat at the kitchen table, watching her mother. Normally, this would be the time they would share the day's events, laughing and talking animatedly. Now, the silence was deafening. "Mom, Alice began, but the words died in her throat. How could she explain her actions? How could she justify having denied her own mother? Marie continued cooking, her back turned to her daughter. The only sound in the kitchen was the gentle bubbling of boiling water and the occasional clink of cutlery. Alice tried again. The fare was interesting, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Marie murmured in response, without elaborating. Dinner was served in tense silence. Alice picked at the food on her plate, her appetite diminished by the knot in her stomach. She cast furtive glances at her mother, hoping for some sign that everything would be okay, but Marie kept her eyes fixed on her own plate. "Your presentation was very good," Alice finally said, her voice almost inaudible. Marie raised her eyes, her gaze meeting Alice's for the first time since they got home. For a moment, Alice saw a mixture of emotions in her mother's eyes, hurt, disappointment, and something that seemed like deep sadness. "Thank you," Marie replied simply before returning her attention to the meal. The rest of the dinner passed in silence. When they finished, Marie got up to wash the dishes, politely refusing Alice's offer of help. Alice retreated to her room, closing the door softly behind her. Sitting on her bed, she hugged her knees to her chest, trying to hold back the tears threatening to fall. She picked up her phone, seeing messages from her classmates. Compliments about how cool she was for having a housekeeper, invitations to go out on the weekend. Messages that would have once filled her with joy now seemed empty and meaningless. Alice looked at the photo on her bedside table, she and Marie smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower, taken on Alice's birthday the previous year. The genuine happiness on their faces now seemed a painful reminder of what she had risked for a moment of social acceptance. Her mother's silence was more painful than any reprimand could have been. Alice was used to seeing Marie struggle, work hard, and sacrifice herself, but always with a smile on her face, always with words of encouragement and love. This silence, this distance, was something new and frightening. Lying in her bed, unable to sleep, Alice replayed the day's events in her mind. Each memory brought a new wave of shame and regret. She had betrayed the person who loved her most in the world, the person who sacrificed everything for her, and for what? To impress people who probably didn't even care about her. As the night wore on, Alice could hear the muffled sounds of her mother moving around the apartment, getting ready for bed. She wanted to get up, run to Marie, hug her, and beg for forgiveness. But something kept her paralyzed, fear, shame, or perhaps the terrible feeling that she had crossed a line that couldn't be easily erased. As sleep finally enveloped her, Alice made a silent promise to herself: somehow, she would find a way to fix this. Somehow, she would show her mother how much she really meant to her. But for now, the chasm between them seemed insurmountable, and Alice fell asleep with the weight of her actions heavy on her heart. The next day dawned gray and rainy, reflecting Alice's mood. She woke to the sound of rain tapping against the window, feeling exhausted after a restless night's sleep. As she left her room, Alice immediately noticed something different. The apartment was silent, without the usual sounds of Marie preparing breakfast. "Mom?" called Alice, her voice echoing in the empty space. There was no answer. Alice checked the kitchen, finding it clean and untouched. On the fridge, there was a hastily written note, left early for work. "There's food in the fridge." Mom. The absence of any affectionate word or signature did not go unnoticed by Alice. She felt a pang in her chest, realizing how deeply her actions had affected her mother. The day at school dragged on. Alice could barely concentrate in class, her mind constantly returning to the events of the previous day and her mother's silent reaction. Her classmates continued to praise the cool maid she had, each comment like a small stab in her heart. When the last bell rang, Alice hesitated before leaving. Part of her wanted to run home and try to fix things with her mother. Another part feared what she would find, or not find, when she got home. Finally, gathering courage, Alice made her way back to the apartment. The rain had intensified, soaking her completely on the short walk from the bus stop to the building. Arriving at the apartment door, Alice noticed something strange. It was completely dark inside, with no sign of life. Normally, even when Marie worked late, she left a light on for Alice. With slightly trembling hands, Alice unlocked the door and entered. The apartment was plunged into darkness and an unsettling silence. "Mom?" she called again, her voice trembling as it echoed in the empty space. There was no response. Alice groped along the wall, searching for the switch. When she finally turned on the lights, the scene that was revealed left her speechless. The small living room and kitchen space was completely transformed. Colorful balloons floated from the ceiling, decorative banners hung from the walls, and in the center of the dining table, there was an elaborate decoration. Confused and with her heart racing, Alice approached the table. There she found a beautifully decorated birthday cake with the words, "Congratulations, Alice," written in icing. Beside the cake, there was an envelope. With trembling hands, Alice picked up the envelope. Her name was written in her mother's familiar handwriting. She opened it slowly, almost afraid of what she might find inside. Inside the envelope, there were two items, an official letter and a handwritten note. Alice picked up the official letter first, her eyes widening as she read the contents. It was an acceptance letter for a study abroad program in London, something she had mentioned as a distant dream months ago. Stunned, Alice picked up her mother's handwritten note, "Dear Alice, surprise. I know this isn't your birthday, but I wanted to celebrate this special achievement. I've spent the last 2 years saving every extra penny I could to make this dream a reality for you. The exchange program in London is an incredible opportunity, and you deserve to experience it. I know things have been difficult lately, and it's not always easy for you to deal with our situation. But I want you to know that no matter what happens, my love for you is unconditional. I am so proud of you and all you've achieved. This is your chance to see the world, to grow, and to become the amazing person I know you will be. With all my love, Mom." Alice felt tears streaming down her face, a mix of emotions taking over her. Joy for the incredible opportunity, guilt for recent events, and overwhelming love for her mother, who, even hurt, continued to sacrifice for her. At that moment, Alice heard the door open behind her. Alice quickly turned around, still holding the acceptance letter in her trembling hands. In the doorway, Marie stood, carrying a small box and a bouquet of flowers. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. "Mom," Alice whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Marie entered the apartment, closing the door softly behind her. She placed the box and flowers on the table next to the cake before turning to Alice. "I wanted it to be a surprise," Marie said, her voice soft and a little hesitant. "I thought I'd do something special to celebrate your acceptance into the program." Alice looked again at the letter in her hands, barely able to believe it. "Mom, it's amazing. But how? It must have cost a fortune." Marie smiled, a tired but loving smile. 2 years of savings. Overtime, some extra jobs on weekends. But it's worth every penny to see you achieve your dream. The realization of her mother's sacrifice hit Alice like a wave. All those days when Marie came home late, exhausted, but still found the energy to help Alice with her studies. The time she gave up buying something for herself so that Alice could have the school supplies she needed. "Mom, Alice began, but the words failed. How could she express the mix of gratitude, love, and shame she felt at that moment? Marie approached, placing her hands on Alice's shoulders. "I know things have been hard for you. I know it's not always easy to be the daughter of a cleaner at such a prestigious school." Alice felt the tears return to her eyes. "No, Mom. I was horrible. What I did at the career fair. I should never have lied about you. I'm so sorry." Marie pulled Alice into a tight embrace. "Oh, darling. I'm not going to say it didn't hurt, because it did. But I understand. You're at a difficult age, trying to find your place in the world. Alice buried her face in her mother's shoulder, letting the tears flow freely. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you, or this opportunity. Marie pulled back a little, holding Alice's face between her hands. Listen to me, Alice. You made a mistake, yes. But that doesn't define who you are. You are a brilliant girl, hardworking, with a huge heart. This program in London is your chance to grow, to see the world from a new perspective. Alice looked into her mother's eyes, seeing in them not condemnation but unconditional love. But what about you, Mom? I can't leave you here alone. Marie smiled, wiping a tear from Alice's face. I'll be fine. Knowing you're achieving your dream will give me strength. Besides, she added with a playful smile, who knows, maybe I'll take a vacation too. Alice laughed through her tears, feeling a huge weight lift off her shoulders. I love you so much, Mom. I promise I'll make you proud. I'll study hard and learn everything I can. I'm already proud of you, my dear, Marie replied, hugging Alice again. Now, how about we cut this cake and start planning your big adventure? Mother and daughter sat at the table, the cake between them as a symbol of celebration and reconciliation. As they ate and talked about the details of the exchange program, Alice felt a new determination growing inside her. She would go to London not only for herself but to honor her mother's sacrifices. And when she returned, it would be with the certainty of never being ashamed of her origins or the unconditional love she was fortunate enough to receive. The emotion of the previous moment gave way to a more serious atmosphere. Alice, still holding the acceptance letter, looked at her mother with a mix of love and regret. Mom, Alice began, her voice trembling, I'm really sorry for what I did at the career fair. I was selfish and cruel. You didn't deserve that. Marie sighed deeply, sitting at the table. Alice, let's talk about it. I understand you're at a difficult age, trying to fit in. But what you did, hurt a lot. Alice fell to her knees beside her mother's chair, tears now flowing freely. I know, Mom. I was horrible. I denied you, denied everything you've done for me. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Marie gently stroked Alice's hair. Dear, forgiveness isn't something you earn. It's something you give. And I forgive you. But we need to talk about this, about why you felt you had to lie. Alice looked up, her red eyes meeting her mother's. I was scared. Scared of what my classmates would think. They're all so rich, so different from us. And do you think that makes them better? Marie asked softly. Alice shook her head. No, I don't. I know it doesn't. But sometimes it's hard to remember that when I'm there. Marie helped Alice stand and sit beside her. Alice, look at me. There's no shame in working hard. There's no shame in doing an honest job, no matter what it is. The shame is in treating people with disrespect because of the work they do. The words hit Alice like a punch in the stomach. She lowered her head, ashamed. I know, Mom. I was so stupid. Marie took Alice's hands in hers. You made a mistake, yes. But you're young, still learning. The important thing is that you recognize the mistake and learn from it. Alice nodded, squeezing her mother's hands. I promise, Mom. I'll never deny you or what you do again. In fact. She hesitated for a moment, I want to tell the truth to my classmates. I want them to know who you really are and how amazing you are. Marie smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears. That's very brave of you, Alice. But are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured. Alice nodded firmly. I'm sure. I'm tired of pretending to be someone I'm not. I want them to know the real Alice and the incredible mother I have. Marie pulled Alice into a tight embrace. I'm so proud of you, my dear. That takes a lot of courage. They stayed like that for a long moment, the silence filled only by the gentle sounds of their sobs. When they finally separated, both had smiles on their faces, though marked by tears. "So," Marie said, wiping away the tears, "how about we start planning your trip to London?" Alice picked up the acceptance letter again, looking at it with a new perspective. "It would be amazing, Mom. But, are you sure we can afford it?" Marie smiled. "I've been saving for 2 years for this, dear. It's your dream, and I want you to achieve it." Alice hugged her mother again. "Thank you, Mom. For everything. I promise I'll make it worth it. I'll study hard and learn everything I can. And when I come back, I'll use what I've learned to help others, just like you always do." Marie kissed Alice's forehead. "I know you will, my love. I know you will." As they began to discuss the trip details, Alice felt a new sense of peace and purpose. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Facing her classmates with the truth would be a challenge. But with her mother's love and support, she felt ready to face anything. The future, once clouded by shame and fear, now seemed bright with possibilities. Alice was determined to honor her mother's sacrifices, be true to herself, and make a difference in the world. And it all started there, in that small kitchen, with the unconditional love of a mother for her daughter.